Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Rob, and I talk about high-end collectible comics and comics art. Subscribe if that's your kind of thing. I love to talk about comics, and I post 1 or 2 videos a week doing just that. This is the video I've been promising for a while. I would have had it out last week, but a little thing called the Superman #1 CGC 9.0 hit Heritage, and I got distracted. I'm still distracted. I've spent all day talking to people, which is funny. It's just what I do. I have to do this now. There's a Superman #1 CGC 9.0. But anyway, I promised this video. I did a podcast episode, link in the description, talking about how the CGC era has heightened the value and importance of classic covers. And I promised to do a video about classic covers. So I'm going to look at a lot of classic covers. I'm going to talk about them a little bit. I'm going to talk about the precipitous rise of some of them. Some of them have been valuable throughout the CGC era. The first couple, for example, were very valuable in the 2000s. But some of these books you wouldn't even have gotten graded. Some of them rarely sold up until recently. So it's actually a really interesting set of books to look at. I mean, they're cool. That's the first thing, is they're really cool. It's a bunch of cool covers. And then some of them have just gone bonkers in terms of price. You could have bought an Action #1, 6.0 Action #1 in, 2000, and you would have made a ton of money. Actual dollar figures, you would have made a ton of money. You would have made a couple $1 million or whatever. But if you bought, a Black Cat 50 for $100 in 2000, and you could sell it for $100,000 today. Those numbers are off the top of my head, but I'm going to give you examples of just ridiculous returns for some of these books that, you easily could have just bought because they were cool. So one of the things that I want to talk about before we go deeper into the video is the selection criteria. So you won't see a Superman #14, you won't see Detective 31, etc. Those are classic covers. They're some of my favorite covers of all time. But what I really want to talk about here is the things that I talked about in that podcast episode, which are covers that really don't have any other value other than the cover. It's not necessarily the truth for all of these. There are reasons to collect some of these titles, but there are a lot of people putting together runs of Superman, so you need a Superman #14. These books are really driven by the cover solely. And so, most people don't care what's in the inside. I don't know what's in the inside of half of the books that I'm going to talk about. So that's one of the things. I'll have spoilers I'll talk about at the end of the video. I'm going to talk about, I have a little plan to include the Superman 14s of the world in some classic covers content, but they won't be in here. This is really about the books that are just about the cover and, drive collectors' hearts because of the covers. So I just wanted to set that stage before we move on to the video. Anyway, so let's get started. Okay, so the first, I'm just going to run through, I'm not going to actually name all the covers, but so this first screen has the first 8 covers I'm going to show. Looks like fun. Some gruesome stuff, some beautiful stuff, some spooky stuff. It's fun. And here we go. Here's another 8 that we're going to look at. Some classics here, some great, great covers. Some covers I've already talked about throughout the channel's history, and some that I've never talked about before. And yeah, so we're going to take a look and go to town on these books. It's going to be a blast. And it's only taken me 6 weeks to do this, so maybe 2 months. I don't know. It's taken me a while to get this video out the door, so I'm happy to be here. All right, first up is one of the 2 covers that I think of as the kind of poster children for the classic cover, archetype, right? There's this one and then the next one. Phantom Lady #17, April 1948, iconic Matt Baker cover. This is definitely, like I said, it's in the mix for the most classic cover. Prime, good girl art, headlight cover. The zombie Dr. Frederick Wortham is grinding his teeth right now because of this one, because it's corrupting the youths. I mean, come on. It was never cheap in the CGC era. It was never cheap. It's always been a big book. but it's gone crazy since. Let's take a look at the census. There's a 9.6, a 9.4, a 9.0, and then there's a bunch of lower grade copies. There are 124 total copies, which, as you'll see throughout this, is actually a pretty high number for one of these classic covers. One of the things that's actually really interesting about these classic covers is that, like, unlike Action Comics #1 or Tech 27 or something like that, where like it's basically like 50-50, like half the copies are restored. Most of these books weren't valuable enough in the 70s, 80s, and 90s to actually have work done on them. So there's a very low percentage of restored books. There's only 8 restored books against 114 universal copies. So that's crazy. Although there are some restored examples I'm going to show you, because of course there are. Okay, Phantom Lady number 17, the Promise Collection pedigree, CGC 9.6. Pink pages, $456,000 in the heart of the bubble. And like, I missed this sale because I was kind of not paying as much attention to comics as I would like. And I didn't miss the sale. I knew about the Promise Collection, but I really didn't. This isn't a book that I, in my detached state from the comics hobby, this wouldn't have been a book I would have like looked at. I was looking at the Captain Americas. I was looking at, some of that kind of stuff. And so I missed this. And then I was like, that's a crazy bubble sale or whatever. And, I really don't think so. I think that as crazy and as hype-filled as this sale was, I don't think that this has like gone down in value since. I really don't, because the results since have like, buoyed this price like retroactively, right? So for example, in the current Heritage Signature Auction, this book, which sold for $7,767.50 in 2006, is coming up for auction, and that's got to be a $100,000 book. It's an 8.0 pedigree book. It's really nice looking, and a 6.5 non-pedigree 6.5 sold for $66,000 in June of this year, in June of 2025. So it's got to be a $100,000 book. And if an 8.0 is a $100,000 book, the number 1 of 1, 9.6, you could say $400,000 to $500,000 now, even now. Suspense Comics number 3, Continental Magazines, April 1944. This is one of the most infamous, sought after Golden Age comics, and it's entirely due to the shocking and powerful cover by Alex Schomburg. If you've seen any of my videos, I've probably mentioned Alex Schomburg once or twice in them. I will mention him many times in this video, and many times in the future as well, because I love Alex Schomburg. And of course, he's one of the most classic cover artists. So there you go. So Phantom Lady 17 is one of the picks for like the classic cover. This is my pick because like I have no idea like Phantom Lady. It's like there's a series. It's a series, and like there's a main character, and you kind of know what's going on. I have no idea what's even inside this book. I have no clue, and I have no interest. I don't need to look inside because all I need is the cover. And so to me, this is like the poster child for the classic cover movement, basically. And it's also a ridiculous cover. It's incredible. It's got everything going for it, and it's Schomburg, and it's just perfect. So dramatic. His bondage cover, I mean, Nazi Klan members. I mean, it's just, I don't know. They're like in a murder pit. And this is I have fun with these classic covers because you look at them and you're just like, and this is one of the things when I was a kid, I kind of thought when I was like, growing up and I was a Marvel zombie and, I was like reading like X-Men or whatever. And then I would read like, the indie, like American Flag or something like that. And there's like, sex in it or whatever. And I'd be like, Golden Age is so corny because you just think like, oh, it's like Batman. And it's like Batman and Robin, Batman, like late 40s, early 50s Batman. It's like corny. And then you got deeper into Golden Age comics, and you realize the content up until the 50s was just demented sometimes. So this is an example of that sort of content that really gets me excited. And it shocks, it retroactively shocks my like 12-year-old brain, where I just was like, Golden Age comics are dumb. They're not dumb. So this one actually has a little bit more restoration. 48 total copies, 31 unrestored, and 13 restored, which is a higher percentage than you see with a lot of these. But this book has been popular for a long time, and it is, as they say, rare as hen's teeth. And so, 9.2 and 9.0 at the top. There's a video, another link in the description, where I talk about the census of this book, which has changed and is actually very confusing. So as you saw, there's a church copy that used to be CBCS 9.2. There still is a CBCS 9.2 in their population report. There was also the pen copy, was a CBCS 9.0, and is, I believe, almost certainly one of these two copies, either 9.0 or 9.2. So I can't go into detail. There was like a whole 15-minute video just about the census of this book, because it's such an important book, and I was so surprised that there were 9.2 and 9.0, because up until looking at the census for this video, I thought that this was the highest graded copy. It sold for $47,800 in 2006. So like I said, this book has never been cheap in the CGC era. It's always been kind of a cult classic. But what's an 8.0 of this book worth right now? $500,000? Something like that. It's a big book, and we have examples. So this 6.5 sold for $280,000 at Comic Link in 2002. Now, again, that's kind of a bubble result, but we have results following that kind of line up with that. So, like I said, the Mile High Pedigree sold CBCS 9.2 for $262,900, and that was in 2017. So, this book sells. Suspense Comics number 3, Pennsylvania copy, like I said, is no longer in a CBCS holder, but sold for $173,275 in 2015. So again, check out the video on the census for this book, because it's kind of gotten weird, and I can't really keep track of what's going on. So now you know. Punch Comics number 12, Gus Rika's Gunfight in a Skull. This is a gunfight in a skull. Huh? This cover is incredible. I came to this book very late. I really didn't know anything about it. And I love it. It's incredible design, like a really perfect execution. And it's also really hard. It's a really hard book to find. So the other two we've seen both have copies of our 9.0. CGC 8.5 is the highest graded copy of this. So let's take a look at the census really quick. 43 total copies. Again, only 4 restored. Highest grade is 8.5. There's an 8.0. And there's no church copy listed in the catalog. So I ask, will that show up someday like the Suspense number 3 did? I believe so. So if you don't know, the Suspense copy number 3, we didn't think that there was one. It was a surprise when it showed up. And I believe that there is a Punch Comics number 12. This is just a guess. I don't know anything, but there's a Punch Comics number 11 and a Punch number 13. And several Punch comics were not listed in the catalog, which indicates that they were bought previously. Now, there could be, it's just books that Church didn't buy. He just missed a few. That's possible. But realistically, he bought everything and had full runs of everything. And so if there's a gap in the catalog, my assumption is somebody bought them. So there might be a Church Punch 12 out there somewhere, which would probably be the highest graded copy. There are examples of church copies that are like VG or whatever, but most of them are pretty nice. So, and if the highest graded is 8.5, we have a candidate for the newest highest graded if there is a church copy. So we're going to do a few of these. The meme, how it started, Punch Comics number 12, Crowley Pedigree, $2,530 in March of 2002. And then how it's going. Punch Comics number 12, Crowley Pedigree, CGC 8.0 sold on September 14th, 2023 for $204,000. I told you I was going to show you some books that had some crazy returns over the years. This one is 80 times the previous sale price, 21 years separated, which is bonkers. You don't see a lot of comics that do that. I'll tell you that much. Chamber of Chills 19. This classic Lee Elias cover was used in an homage as the cover image for the horror punk rock band The Misfits' single Die Die My Darling, which makes it collectible for punk rockers. This is the highest graded copy, CGC 9.6. Spoilers, it's the highest graded copy. So, this sold for $776.25 on October 1st, 2004. And then, heart of the pandemic, it sold for $102,000 on November 18th, 2021, which is 131 times the 2004 sale. The census for this one is actually pretty high. So there's 158 total copies, just 5 restored again. This is crazy, although there are a couple of qualified books as well. There's the 196, 194, 292s, a 90, 3 90s, and then a bunch under 90. But 158 total copies, which is a lot compared to some of these other books, including the book I'm going to show you next. Cinderella Love, number 25. I just discovered this. I know nothing, next to nothing, almost nothing about romance comics. And a copy sold for a bunch of money recently, and somebody told me about it, and I was like, oh my goodness. And then I went and I looked at this crazy Matt Baker cover, and, I know Matt Baker, and I didn't know this cover, and I wish I had, because I would have bought one like 15 years ago for like $20. And, yeah, because, look at this thing. But I only discovered it recently, and so I'm a fan now. And it's incredible. It's incredible. So I told you it's rare, right? 35 copies, 1 restored because it was way too cheap to restore. The highest graded is an 8.0, and then there are 3 7.5s, one of which I've just shown you. And this is one of the reasons I learned about it. So in June of 2024, Cinderella Love, number 25, CGC 7.5, sold for $60,000. So it's a big money, big number. And it really hasn't sold that much, so this is the best example of the growth of this book I can share. I would love to see sales results from the early 2000s because it must have sold for pennies. But a copy sold in 2009 for $725, CGC 5.5, and it sold for $21,849 in 2025. So this is a sale, Comic Connect from 2009, $725. And this is a recent one, Quality Comics, go Quality Comics, $21,849 recently. So that's a pretty good, precipitous rise. But like I said, it just doesn't sell. So this is all you've got at Heritage. Try and find another book that has only had 5 sales in the entire Heritage era. It's hard. Trust me, it's hard. When I see a book like this, it's hard. I've seen, it's like I did that thing about, super rare, early, pre-Golden Age, pre-hero books. And some of those, they're only like, 8 extant, right? And 5 of them have sold at Heritage, right? This is rare to see something that has sold so rarely at Heritage. It's crazy. And you just don't know if there are any out there, right? Like, are there waiting in the wings, like a bunch of copies of this? I doubt it, but we'll see. Be interesting to see, because a $60,000 sale will shake some copies out of the woodwork. Black Cat Mystery Comics number 50, Harvey Publications. Harvey Publications, future home of Richie Rich. This Lee Elias cover is really gruesome. Like, it's insane. And yeah. I'm like, I look at this thing and I go, this was on the newsstand? So, and again, my 12-year-old self, I had never seen this. If my 12-year-old self had seen this, I'd be like, wow, Golden Age. Well, this is Golden Age, but 50s comics are cool or not cool. I don't know. I don't know how I would have reacted, but that's bonkers. And so this is one of the most infamous covers I'm going to show you today. So let's look at some results. CGC 9.4 file copy. We have a result from 2009. It sold for $3,807. And in 2025, recently, it sold for $55,200. So that's a big number. Let's take a look at Heritage. There we go, January 9th, 2025. And the owner is looking for $110,400, which is, there you go. So if you want that one, you know where to go. Bunch of these. This has been collected for a long time because it's just such a striking, gruesome cover. 124 total copies, 7 restored. There's a 9.8, 3 9.6s, 4 9.4s, 4 9.2s, 4 9.0s, and a bunch of other copies. Fantastic Comics number 3, Fox Features Syndicate. Crazy Lou Fine cover. Samson battling a gigantic, imposing red robot. Super recognizable. Was championed by Steve Fischler, actually, and he won that battle because this book is pretty popular these days. Really difficult. So 33 total copies, 8 restored, 194, which you just saw, 180, 1 7.5, and 2 7.0s. That's really difficult. If you want a high grade copy, you had one chance, and then now it's gone. And here it is. So the CGC 9.4, John Burke's copy, Edgar Church Mile High copy, sold for $243,000 in the Burke collection auction in 2017. This thing is worth a mint now. I mean, forget it. So I have an example that's crazy. It just shows you how much the value has shot up as people have realized how difficult it is to get. So this 2.5 sold in 2014. So this isn't even that long ago. 2014 sold for $9,261.25. In 2024, recently, a 1.8 sold for $90,000. From just over $9,500 in 2014, and then $90,000 for a 1.8, which again it does what you need it to do with this cover, with this book. It has the full cover. So why ever it's a 1.8 doesn't really matter because the cover shows, right? And that's one of the things I was talking about in that podcast episode. It's like, it just doesn't even matter. If the cover looks good, you're good to go. But $90,000 for a 1.8. So what is that 9.4 worth now? I don't even want to try and calculate that. Mass Comics number 1, L.B. Cole, Fairies to the Flame cover. I think it's really remarkable for the colors and the design. And it's just like, this barely fits into any concept of what my 12-year-old self would have thought of as like a comic book cover at all. And certainly not one from 1945 or whenever, 45, yeah, whenever this came out. So just really masterful design. Not a book I've like sought after or really thought about a lot, but when I was doing this, I was like, oh, this is definitely one I'm going to have to cover. 86 copies, which is surprising because this is a short-lived title. 2 9.6s, they're restored. 1 9.4, it's restored. So there's 70 universal copies and 16 restored copies. The highest grade is the one we just saw, 8.5. There's an 8.0, etc. But let me show you. I told you I was going to show you a restored, one of these books restored, and I will show you why. Because it's the church copy. The church copy is a restored Mass Comics number 1. And my guess, just as an aside, my guess is that the restored 9.4 is this one because, yeah, I mean, why not, right? And so they probably just didn't submit it correctly. But what would a 9.6 go for if it was unrestored? Well, it would go for a lot of money because a Promise Collection 8.5 sold for $144,000 in March of 2023, which is a big, chunky number. And it had previously sold. So this is one of those examples where a Promise Collection book actually went up in value after that 2021 sale. So it originally sold for $102,000 and went up from there. The best kind of how it started and how it's going I have for this is this one, which is pretty crazy. So you couldn't even grade it. But notice the tears on the cover of this. So there's a tear in the lower left-hand corner, and there's a tear in the right-hand corner. Keep that in mind. It sold for $161 in 2004, raw. This is from the collection of Wendy and Richard Pini, by the way. So interesting. That exact copy, which lost the Wendy and Richard Pini notation, unfortunately sold for $13,200 in 2024, which is 82 times the 2004. So, Injury to Eye, pre-code horror, Injury to Eye, Bernard Bailey cover, and this is terrifying. So if you have a phobia about your eye being poked out with a hot poker, you probably wouldn't have wanted to see this cover on the newsstand. And this is, and again, Frederick Wortham it hates me for just talking about this, but it is what it is. We won. Comics, we do whatever we want now. So take that, Frederick Wortham. Mr. Mystery 12, did I even say that? I don't know if I didn't even say the name. I was just so excited about the Injury to Eye. 90 total copies. Again, this was infamous from even when I was a kid. I recognize this from when I was a kid. When I started looking at the price guide and stuff like that. 79 universal copies. Highest graded, there are 5 of them. There's an 8.0, 5 8.0s, 2 7.5s, and 1 7.0. Difficult book to get in high grade. Oh, also, there is a Mr. Mystery 11, so there's a possibility that there's an unlisted church copy. Again, he just bought everything. This is at the end of where you can kind of expect that he bought everything. This is the zone where Bethlehem, White Mountain, and church all cross over, like between 1949 and 1953, 1954. So it's interesting. But there is a Mr. Mystery 11, so there's a possibility that there's a church copy out there, which again would probably be the highest graded copy. Although, one of the things about the church copies is that if they were higher up in the stack, they didn't have that compression, which kind of kept them in an anaerobic state and kind of, pressed basically for 20 years. How it started? 2000. See, this was not a cheap book. It was a big book, even early. So $2,875 was a lot of money for this comic in 8.0 in 2003, and it went up, but not precipitously, right? So it's like 10 times or 11 times or whatever. 8.0, Mr. Mystery 8.0 sold for $36,000 in 2021. Classic Lou Fine cover. I've talked a lot about this recently. The original art for this sold recently, which was remarkable. The red bee fighting a shark chained up. That doesn't look good, but it looks great because look at the colors on that, and the line work by Lou Fine is just remarkable, and it's really finely rendered. It's really great. The original art is just phenomenal. So, but yeah, the red bee is in trouble. He's got 2 shackles underwater. It's just not good. And he's fighting that shark who's green. It's just, I don't know. He can't be healthy. Maybe he's mad. Census, 51 total copies. There's a few more restored copies. So there's 14 restored copies. 36 universal. There is 1 9.6. Can you guess the source of that 9.6? There are 2 8.0s, 2 7.5. That's basically it. So if you're looking for a high-grade copy of this book, look no further than Edgar Church's Basement. So, yeah, so that's the copy I showed you earlier. But I've got a how it started, how's it going for this one, which, again, this book was pretty popular. So here comes number 5, CGC 7.0, sold for $1,840 in 2002. And then sold for $14,400 in 2024. So not the precipitous rise, but some of these books started off at a kind of a higher level, than others, and they're not all returning 100 times what they sold for in the early 2000s. Dynamic Comics number 8. There's a CGC forum thread called Cherish a Chesler, and I've never really looked into it, and I should have, because I would have known about this comic earlier. So this is a crazy, crazy illustration by Gus Rica, and the guy, he's like got a candle wax face, and his brain is exposed, and then the gruesome heads in the background are just, it's just, the design of this is amazing, and the rendering is absolutely amazing. And this would have looked good. Like, this would have fit in the underground comics era. This looks like something that would have been like next to a Crumb drawing or something like that. Just so good. And 6.0, right? If I'm showing you a 6.0, it's a difficult book to find in high grade. There is a 9.2, but other than that, there's a 7.0 and then a 6.0. There are 29 total copies, 5 restored. This is an impossibly difficult book. There is a church copy. It's in the listing, so I wonder if that's the 9.2, and it just hasn't come up for sale, or up for sale any place I would have seen it. But yeah, other than that, the best you're going to get is the 7.0. The 6.0 I showed you, which is the best copy I can show you, sold for $56,400 in 2025. And that's for a 6.0. 10 years. This is 3.0. The price is for a 3.0. In 2014, it sold for $991. It jumped up to $4,800 in 2019. 2020, $4,800. And then quadrupled in price, more than quadrupled in price, to 2024 and sold for $19,800. So there's been a leap in this book for sure. Mysterious Adventures number 13. This flaming skull cover is one that I actually discovered in doing this. I was like kind of looking for classic covers. Like I said, I actually didn't even, I'll have to go back and add that. As I said, I was looking for classic covers that like weren't from major titles, that were basically just popular because they were classic covers. And so I was searching through Heritage, etc., for books that had reasonable results, and I thought were cool looking. This one I really think is cool looking. So Mysterious Adventures number 13, flaming skull cover. Cover art credited to Dick Beck, who I've never heard of before as well. And you don't even get an art credit on the CGC label, which is fascinating. In the census they do. So Dick Beck cover. 78 copies, which is a lot. 2 restored. Highest graded, again, is an 8.0. Some of these books are very difficult in high grade. There's a 7.5, 2 7.0s, and a smattering of lower grade copies. So this copy, the copy I just showed you, sold in 2021 for $18,000, which is not the biggest price that you've seen for anything, but I just thought that cover was cool, so I wanted to share it, and it definitely fits in with what I've been talking about. And it has had a precipitous rise. So in 2011, which is not that long ago, you could have bought, it was just in a group lot. It wasn't even valuable enough to like get graded for sure, but to pull out and sell raw by itself. It was sold in a group lot with 7 other books for $262. So, you do the math. It's not a lot of money. It's less than $100, even if you're like valuing this the highest of all 7. And so a 2.0 then sold in 2025 recently for $1,020. Not a ton of money, but considering you could have bought it 10 years ago for $262 for a group lot of 7 books, it's not too bad. And it's cool. I love that cover. I'm a fan now. This is one of my favorite covers. I've talked about this before. I love Will Eisner. I'm making a point of sharing more Will Eisner here on the channel, and so I'm doing it. This is the second to last issue of the Spirit comic book series, not the newspaper inserts, but the actual comic books. Quality Comics, and this is a classic cover by Will Eisner. It depicts a shadowy figure who greatly resembles Lauren Bacall. So, incredible. And, one of the simpler designs that we've had, but I think it's perfect. And I just love Eisner's art. He was a master at line work of design. I mean, certainly of design, both in the way that he did comic book storytelling, but the way that he would put pages together, just as images, right? He was just amazing and a great drafts person. So a very popular book, 122 copies total. There is a 9.8, a 9.6, a 9.4, a 9.2, and then a bunch of copies below there. Not many restored, so just 8 restored. And then there's a CGC X JSA, so that means that there's a verified signature that's also an 8.5. So that would be a cool book. You know, Will Eisner signature. Just so you know, the church copy is now a 9.8. It used to be a 9.6. It sold for $57,600 in 2022 and has since been upgraded to a 9.8. We have a how it started, how it's going. So 9.2 sold for $2,760 in 2003. And Comic Book Addiction, which is the second time that they've shown up on the channel, sold a 9.2 for $22,500, which is kind of the regular. So if it was a big book in the early 2000s, it's kind of gone up 10 to 15%. If it was a lesser book, as you've seen, some of these books have gone up 100 times. But I love that one. That's one I've owned. Actually, I had a really nice copy of that book, which I should show. I'll show it in a short. If I ever get to stop talking about Superman #1 CGC 9.0. Probably never. Mystery Men Comics #3. So this is a very popular book. I love the design of this. I love the fine line work. And it's a really dramatic, like, snapshot, right? He's running away. He's got the damsel in distress over his shoulder. And he's turning around to, like, fire guns at the bad guys. And then there's a green-skinned dude with a hatchet, like, about to pounce on him. So it's pretty dramatic. Lou Fine, again, Lou Fine is amazing. Green Mask, he's got a green mask on. So Green Mask is the hero that we're looking at, shooting at the bad guys. A really cool cover, one I've known for a long time. Not the biggest census, so 40 copies total, 3 restored. There's a 9.6. A 9.4, a 9.0, restored, and then 8.5 and a bunch below there. Tough book. How it started? So $833.75 for a CGC 5.0 in 2002. In 2018, so that's a while ago now, that copy, or a similar graded copy, sold for $6,900 at Comic Connect in 2018. So 7 Seas Comics #4. This is the Davis Crippen D copy. Classic cover notation. This stunning cover depicts the main character, the South Sea Girl, in a desperate underwater battle with a shark. Second shark cover, but look at the design of that. And again, Matt Baker. Matt Baker you cannot beat if you're looking for a classic cover. He's your go-to guy. Maybe Alex Schomburg. Whatever, but he's one of them for sure. Look at that. And the movement on this, the kind of like underwater flowing nature of this cover just blows my mind. An incredible example of Matt Baker's masterful design, masterful rendering, and beautiful, beautiful women. 52 total copies in the census. 1 restored, just 1. Just 2 9.2s, 2 9.0s, 1 8.5. The D copy pedigree sold for $81,000 in 2023. That beautiful D copy. Have you ever seen this before, by the way? 7 Seas Comics #4, CGC 5.5 from 2004 at Heritage. None of the images from this auction show up, which is very strange. A copy sold for $460 in 2004, regardless of whether or not you can see the image. But I've never seen that before. I think that's crazy. And then a 5.5 sold for $19,200 in 2023. So it's gone up. Not 100 times, but. Starling Comics #49. This is one of the most recognizable covers of the Golden Age. It's a masterful airbrush cover painting by Alex Schomburg. He signs this as Zella. So the work that he did for Nador, Better, Standard, the airbrush work especially, but he did line work covers for them as well. He signed as Zella, Alex, backwards. But yeah, I mean, this is just, I've talked about this cover before. I love it. There's nothing I would change about this cover. I was seeking this cover in the early 2000s, and it was like always just out of reach, like out of my like easy budget at the time. And this is one of those things where I wish I had just reached for it and gotten it, because it's gone bonkers since. But yeah, such a beautiful copy. This is a church copy, of course. There are a lot of these. I was surprised at how many of these there are. So there's 151 total copies, 140 universal, 5 restored. There are 6 9.6s. So this is like really pretty easy book. There's 3 9.4s, including the White Mountain copy, 4 9.2s, etc., etc. I mean, 2 9.2s that are universal and 2 qualified. But there's a lot of copies of this book, which is, hasn't dampened values from skyrocketing. So 2006, so a little bit later, an 8.0 sold for $3,883.75. So this is what I was talking about. It's like, yeah, I could have bought this, but it wasn't like an impulse buy. And at the same time, I was like buying like 8.0, like, exciting comics from the similar era, Schomburg covers, etc. And it's like, oh, I should just, and I just didn't do it. And that's a bummer, because I've never owned this book, and I would love to. And now, you go from $4,000 to 2025, $22,200, which is not a precipitous rise, because again, this has always been a very, very valuable cover, but it keeps going up. So what are you going to do? Now with that, we're done. This one took me a long time to get through, because as you can see, it's a long video, a lot of research, a lot of kind of thinking about which covers I was going to cover. And it's been an incredible amount of fun. So hopefully you could tell how much I enjoyed it. I've got some more content coming up on classic covers. So I'm going to do a tier list. I'm going to do a classic covers tier list. I'm going to take these 16 covers that I shared with you, and I am going to add maybe 9, maybe 14. Going to get to some sort of nice round number. Some superhero covers, Superman 14, Detective 31, etc. And we're going to do a tier list, because I wanted to do a tier list on the channel for a while. I'm going to do one on pedigrees at some point, but that's going to take me a little bit of work, because I still don't have an opinion on like half of the top 50 pedigrees. And so, yeah, look forward to that. I've got some other content coming up soon, some timely content about current heritage auction, etc. And yeah, so thank you. If you've made it this far, thank you. This is great. Please leave a comment about what you enjoyed about this, which is your favorite cover, which one is the most surprising in terms of the value, like the current absolute value or the rise in value. Let me know if there's any covers I missed. I did a pretty good survey of what's out there, but there's obviously some things I just forgot about or didn't see or whatever, or haven't sold for a ton of money, but are about to sell for a ton of money, especially something like the romance covers, which I know nothing about, except I'm a Cinderella Love 25 fan now. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.